Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Where the Blue and Red Berries Grow, written by Kuji. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin Chapter 1. Shout out Tio Shiranayatsun for requesting this. One day at the Asano residence a fight began to break out. What do you mean work harder? His son yelled back at him. It is as I said, son, you must start to work harder than ever before, the principal said rather calmly. His father leaned over his desk to get right up to his son's face. I am doing my best, is all he said before he stormed off to his room. He started to pack his bags, and only what seemed like minutes after he ran out of the house. While at the same time another fight broke out at the Shiota residence. Will you stop trying to me up with random guys already? Nagisa yelled at her mother. You have no idea what you are doing. I am trying to help you, she yelled back at her daughter. This is when her mother balled up her hands into fists. I am not going to stand here and take this. Nagisa yelled at her. She ran up to her room and locked the door. She began to take out 2 duffel bags and stuff them full of clothes. As well as other supplies, like her notebooks, female hygiene products, and her work clothes. But just she was about to climb out her window she realized it, OSHT. Can't forget my assassination kit, she said, going to underneath her bed and taking it out to put it into one of her duffel bags. By chance both she and Asano ended up at the same park that night. While they were walking towards the same bench they noticed each other. Looks like you tried running away just like me, he said plainly, looking at Nagisa. Yeah, but only because my mom's nonsense has become just too unbearable, she said back to Asano. Oh really, he said, raising an eyebrow at her. Want to talk about it, he said with a look of concern in his eyes. This made Nagisa feel she could trust him and told him everything. Asano was dumbfounded. Wow, I never realized you of all people had to endure that, he said, unsure of how to comfort her. Does your friend Akabane know that you are, a girl, he said, clearly uncomfortable with asking. No, he doesn't, so please don't tell him. I said, grabbing his hands. I won't, I promise, but I think I know how to solve both our problems, he said with a smile. After what seemed like only a few minutes of explaining, Nagisa could not believe her ears. All she had to do was turn her back on her friends in Class E. But in the end, even if she didn't like Asano, she had to put a stop to her mother. So she said what she felt she had to say. I'm in, she said, extending her hand for a handshake. Asano shook her hand back with a sinister grin that still slightly creeped her out. Over the next few days many unexpected things started to happen. Nagisa was officially engaged to Asano, but the school did not know. She was transferred to Class A. The expected results then came to be. Class E marks began to drastically drop from lack of effort, especially Karma's. At lunch Nagisa and Asano sat together with the 4 virtuosos. Thanks to you we have finally crushed the Class E sum, he said, leaning towards Nagisa. Even so, you are far too sad. Don't tell me you actually liked most of those idiots, he said, laughing lightly. No, not that, she said, even though she knew she was lying to both of them. I just feel guilty, that's all, she said, leaning back. This made the others a little more understanding of her position. I don't blame you, I mean they treated you like their pet, he said very plainly. A part of me thought that this was the truth I always ignored. But even so, she still felt like some like Karma and the Terasaka gang took her seriously. Yeah, I guess you are right, she said, shaking of the feeling and smiling. Other than Asano and the 4 virtuosos, no one knew that Nagisa was really female. But this was only the beginnings of her troubles as she and Asano begun to live together. Hey Asano, I'm out of shampoo, can you grab me a bottle from the closet, she asked him from behind the shower curtain. After a week of living with him, Nagisa does not realize she asked him of such indecent things. Sure. Asano said, very unsure of how things became this way. How careless she could be at times really set him off. Even so, he complied with her request now that he was most likely stuck with her for life. Perhaps I can mold her into my ideal wife, he thought to himself while preparing breakfast. When he finished, he went to his room to change into clean clothes. That is also when Nagisa walked out of the shower covered only by a towel. Nagisa began to blush and look down at herself, then at Asano. She ran to her room apologizing to Asano for this. It was at that moment that Asano sank to his knees, "So that just happened," is all he could say. A few moments later she came out of her room fully dressed, checking to see if he was okay. Asano then assured that he was just surprised and he was fine. After an awkwardly silent breakfast they made their way to school. While this was going on, Karma was slowly trudging to school. "Why, Nagisa? Why?" he shouted out loud, which scared the people passing by. A minute or so of walking later is when he saw Nagisa and Asano walking together to the main building. "What the hell," he said, this time much more quiet than before. Chapter 2. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. That morning when Karma got to class he told his classmates of what he saw. Their reactions as well as Koro-sensei's were just as he expected. Why the hell would he be with Asano? Terasaka stated, slamming his hands on his desk. It was also not just him, but others were outraged by this as well. Hold on. Maybe Nagisa was forced into this. Kayano said, trying to defend her friend. But she could tell that what she said made sense to the others in class. I'm the only one allowed to force that cutie to do things, Nakamura said. This made everyone turn to her, staring daggers, calling her SXL deviant and other things. Sorry, I just don't like sharing my toys with anyone, she said, raising her hands in self-defense. She sat down laughing, clearly joking, but still only getting a laugh out of Karma. Even so, it was only a short chuckle before he got serious again and scolded her. Then that raises an even bigger question. What did he do to force Nagisa into this? Karma said, pointing this fact out. Many of them suggested blackmail, which suggested that maybe Nagisa was hiding something. Perhaps both Nagisa and his mother were drugged by Asano and his father, she asked. She let this question hang in the air while she looked at the faces of her classmates. Everyone took a minute or so to think about this theory of hers. No, not likely. His mom and dad are divorced, also his mother is a complete psychopath. Karma stated clearly for everyone. She hated the fact that he was forced to leave the main building and was labeled an idiot, he said. Explain more of his doubt for this theory. Perhaps we should follow them both for the next few days. Itona asked the whole class. Everyone shook their heads in agreement, but clearly did not want to think about what they might see. Alright, we will take shifts and watch them from afar in pairs. Karma stated, assigning partners. Since he and Nagisa were best friends, no one argued with him. He decided that he and Nakamura would take today's shifts. Koro-sensei allowed them to leave early so they could catch his trail right away. Nagisa and Asano both left at the same time but split up after about 2 minutes. They decided to split up and decided that Karma will follow Asano, while Nakamura will keep an eye on Nagisa. Karma followed Asano for about 20 minutes before they reached an apartment building. So this is where he lives? Karma questioned. This made him decide to stick to the shadows and watch to see if the principal would soon return. I hope you are having better luck than me, Nakamura, he said, crossing his fingers. Holy SHT. I have hit the god DMN jackpot, she said, unable to fully believe what she saw. Nagisa was working in a maid cafe, dressed as a maid. Nakamura, being the pervert she was, took pictures, and while touching herself in the alley that she was hiding in. This is when Karma came up from behind, excited, he asked her, pretending to cover his eyes. Nakamura freaked out when he did this. After she decided to finish up, which took about 20 minutes, she decided to ask. Aren't you supposed to be watching Asano? She questioned him. He pointed to the shop and Nakamura looked and saw that Asano entered wearing normal clothes while she was quote-unquote having fun with herself. He then told her what happened only moments ago at the creep's house. While waiting for Asano's father to come home, he left in the regular clothes he was wearing now. Where are you going now, Mr. Honor Roll? He said, clenching his fists. Asano then made his way to this street and entered the store, waving to Nagisa. Now that she was caught up to speed, and fairly shamed, they decided to go in. So they put on the disguises that Kayano made them and entered. Everyone referred to Nagisa as Yuki when he served them. Yuki. Looks like your boyfriend is here again, one of his coworkers said, winking at him. You could tell this made all the other guys and girls in there jealous. Why did you have to notify everyone, he said, blushing at this comment. Because you look so cute when I embarrass you like this, she said, blowing him a kiss. This made everyone excited as they probably imagined girl-on-girl action between them. Looks like Nagisa are popular. Karma whispered plainly to Nakamura, grinning. Don't you mean Yuki, she said, grinning back at him. Looks like the couple are enjoying themselves, said Nagisa's coworker. Yes, I guess we are. Mabel. Karma said, looking at her name tag. He then ordered 2 coffees for him and Nakamura. Nakamura then slapped her butt and said, or we can just have you, she laughing. She then laughed as well, which made Nakamura think, she must be used to this working here, she thought, reminding herself to become a regular once they dealt with this little problem of Nagisa's. After a few hours of coffee and talking, Nagisa and Asano left, both in the direction of his house. When they got back to his place they both entered. What the hell is Asano gay? Nakamura said, emphasizing the word gay. Looks like that he also abused that no jobs rule and forced Nagisa into the role of his servant. Karma said very solemnly. After a little bit it was 10 p.m. and Karma decided to send Nakamura home before her parents would get worried. But what worried him most was that he stayed out there all night and saw them both leave to school together. Worst of all, Nagisa was actually smiling. Did he develop Stockholm Syndrome already? Karma said worryingly. Chapter 3. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. That morning when Karma Nakamura got to class they told them of their discoveries. Nagisa started to work at a maid cafe under a fake name and Asano claimed to be his boyfriend, she said, shocking the whole class. She decided to wait a few minutes for this to sink in before continuing. He then walked Nagisa back to an apartment building that we assumed was where he lived. This made everyone dead silent. So it is sadly safe to assume that Nagisa became servant, she said, looking down to the ground very solemnly. I even stayed there all night and Nagisa never left. Karma said, making everyone even more shocked than before, but still not as much as they will be in a minute. And worst of all, the other residents all said they both have been living there for almost 2 weeks now, he said, making them all freak the hell out. Unfortunately it seems like both their parents approved of it, she said, stating the roadblock ahead of them. Even so, everyone felt just a little more hopeful now that they know more about the situation. How are we supposed to stop him then if Nagisa's mother approves of this hell? Kayano said, deeply depressed by the trouble her friend is in. This made everyone think of whether or not they could do anything. Don't worry, children. If we are able to gather hard evidence then we can stop this. Koro-sensei stated with yellow and green stripes. So long as we follow them eventually we will catch Asano slipping up and catch him in the act, he added, bringing hope to everyone. That's right, we just have to keep this up and eventually we will catch a break. Karma said, uplifting their spirits even more. With that, Karma and Nakamura slept through the first subject to catch up on last night's sleep. Well, Karma instead slept much longer, all the way through to lunchtime. Hey, wake up Karma, it's lunchtime. Terasaka said, shaking him awake. He sat up yawning, rubbing his eyelids, noticing that the sun was high in the sky. Why did you let me sleep till lunch? Karma said, very groggy. This rewarded him strange looks from everyone in the class. You finally started to trust us, he said very plainly to a confused Karma. Up until now, whenever Nagisa was in trouble you never trusted us with this news. Terasaka said, stating the obvious. But now that the time came you finally step up to the plate and became a team player, he said, slapping his back. I could say the same things about you as well, buddy. Karma said very awkwardly. This made everyone laugh, and this is when Karma had an epiphany. So this is what it's like to actually be a part of the class. Karma thought, smiling the goofiest grin he ever had. While at this time Nagisa, Asano, and the 4 virtuosos started to have their lunch on the roof of the main building as usual. They broke out their bento boxes and started to chat away carefree as usual. Hey, have either of you have been attacked by those class E losers, said Byren. This made them both Nagisa and Asano look to him but not before looking at each other. No. They said in unison, completely unexpectedly startling one another. This made the others laugh, which caused them to laugh as well. Even if they did, would it matter? I could easily take down any of them in a fight, he said very plainly. This made Nagisa chuckle, which caught everyone's attention. It sounds like someone is trying to make them sounds muy fuerte. Nagisa said, being unable to fall over laughing. This is when everyone began to laugh, including Asano. This made Asano think, are we actually starting to be friends, he thought to himself. Since when do you know Spanish? Asano said, raising an eyebrow. My mom had me take classes since I was 6 years old. Nagisa said, blushing. This made everyone laugh more and caused Ren to ruffle her hair. Hey guys, look like we have our fangirls coming this way. Ren said, pointing towards the gaggle of girls coming out of the door. When Nagisa was going here he had both fangirls and boys, but now are different. Since coming back with Asano and the others, she finally lost her fanboys. But gained even more fangirls in return, so either way he still had to deal with annoying idiots. And for once not the idiots in Class E she had to deal with. This thought made her realize she just called herself an idiot as well. Now she can understand why her old teacher threw her into the end class last year. When the school bell rang they all decided to go back to her and Asano's place. But little did they know that Kayano and Terasaka were following them. Holy SHT, Nagisa is going to get gang banged is all he could manage to say for rest of the trip back to Asano's place. We have to tell everyone, she said before taking out her phone. She then got Ritsu to connect her to everyone so that she could tell all the horrible news. Wait Ritsu, I just realized. Why don't you take pictures through Nagisa's phone or call the police when Asano was in the middle of raping him last night? Kayano said with great concern. I'm sorry, but Nagisa seems to have gotten a new phone, so he actually has to get close my main body again, she said very plainly. Itona, did you hear that? Can you make Ritsu her own separate robot body, she asked the technology whiz. It will take a few weeks, as well as everyone grabbing me spare parts to build it, but yes, I believe I could, he said in his usual mellow tone. This gave everyone hope in being able to gather the evidence they need to stop Asano. Chapter 4. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. As soon as they got into the apartment they all sat down and took out their homework. Alright, let's get this study session started, said Ren, pumping his fists in the air. This made the others snicker, except for to no one's surprise Asano, of course. Can't you ever take anything seriously? He asked Ren before cracking up in a smile of his own. This made everyone break out laughing, completely forgetting the purpose of them coming over. Or at least until he reminded all of them shortly after they started laughing. Did you all forget the whole reason we are here? He said as mellow as usual. This made them all stop to remember why Asano asked them to come over. We got together to help tutor Nagisa, remember, he said like a mother reminding her children to clean their room. Sorry about that, so let's get started then. Ren said, starting off the study session. After about a half hour Nagisa got up when Ren said he was thirsty. Does anyone want tea? Nagisa asked the whole group. Everyone else said they were thirsty and accepted her kind offer. She then went into the kitchen and came back a few minutes later with 6 cups of hot tea along with some tea biscuits. They decided to quietly finish off their homework while drinking their tea. After another half hour or so they finally finished their homework. Now let's really get into the studying. Memorization studying. Natsuhiko said, holding his fist in the air. Everyone thought at that moment, poor Nagisa, as he began his part of tutoring. After an hour of memorizing science formulas everyone could tell that Nagisa was done for the day. I think that's enough for today. Asano asked them all for confirmation. They all agreed and said their goodbyes before going home. Except for Ren, who said something that all of them were trying not to bring up. Have a good time on your date tomorrow, he said before leaving, doing air quotes when he said the word date. This caused Asano to become flustered and push him out the door as quickly as he could. While Nagisa just stood there blushing at the reminder that they were going on a date tomorrow to keep up appearances for their parents. Sorry about Ren. Asano said, rubbing his temples in frustration. No need to apologize. He was only joking. Nagisa said, waving her hands around. She then looked down in embarrassment and walked towards the bathroom. Do you mind if I take the first shower? She said, stopping midway to the bathroom. No, of course not, besides it's my turn to prepare dinner tonight anyway, so you go relax before we eat, he said, turning away trying to hide his blush. With this, Nagisa went into the bathroom and turned on the shower. Why did I go this far to crush Class E? Asano whispered, questioning himself. While she was in the shower, she could not help but think about how badly she embarrassed Asano today. Will he start to hate me because of this? She asked herself as she stopped shampooing her hair to think. Am I even more trouble for him than I was for everyone in Class E? She thought very depressingly. She then decided to shake of these thoughts of doubt and finish up her shower quickly. She got out and went to her room to change into new underwear, as well as an oversized white shirt that went all the way down to her knees. Sorry to take so long, Asano. So what is for dinner? She asked, peeking over his shoulder. Vegetable stir-fry with seasoned beef strips, he said back to her, not even bothering to look at her. Within a few minutes of Nagisa setting up the table for dinner, he finally finished both dishes. Bring the plates. The food is done, he said to her, turning sideways. After a few minutes of silence, Asano could not bear it and decided to make conversation. Even though it was Nagisa he only had to speak to. Wait, since when have I been referring to her by her first name? He thought to himself in surprise. So how well did you think the studying went? Asano asked, looking her in the eyes. I think it went well, she said, getting nervous as he made eye contact with her. She took a few seconds to compose herself before continuing. Although that memorization studying was a little intense, she said, laughing lightly, hoping he would laugh as well. Yeah, sorry about that. Natsuhiko tends to take studying a little too far sometimes. Asano sighing. But at least he has proven to have the best memory out of everyone in the whole school, he said somewhat regretfully. But enough apologizing for tonight. Tonight we rest and tomorrow we go on a date, he said, as happily as he ever managed in his life. Seeing him smile somehow made her happier than ever before. When the four virtuosos left, Kayano and Terasaka wondered why they left so early. Hey, did you feel any chills when you saw their smiles? Terasaka asked, clearly worried for their friend. Yes, that is right. Terasaka actually feels bad for what he did to Nagisa at the beginning of the year. Totally. Kayano said, shivering at the thought of what they did to Nagisa. She then for a few brief seconds blushed from her yaoi fantasy. Even so, we have to stay strong for him, Kayano said, tightening her grip. Kayano and Terasaka looked to each other, but not to confirm what they saw, but to confirm what they both were feeling in this moment. They were feeling helpless and completely incapable of helping their friend. This was the feeling they felt they needed to confirm above all others. Chapter 5. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this Saturday morning was a nice sunny day, perfect for those so-called date that they were not about to have. Fortunately for them, since they lived together, Asano did not have to pick Nagisa up. When she left her bedroom, Asano could not believe what she looked like. She was wearing a light blue dress that matched her hair color perfectly. Nagisa was wearing a black belt around her waist, with a rose-styled belt buckle. DMN, she is cute, was all he could think when he saw this. This is when he felt a bulge in his breathes and hoped she would not notice. Even so, he could see her blushing and looking away from him. Sorry, he said, waving his hands up unnecessarily in defense. No, it's all right. Nagisa said, blushing even more fiercely than before. It was actually really nice to know that someone thinks I look good, she said, unintentionally giggling. Nagisa, on the other hand, was breathless at the sight of Asano dressed for a date. He was wearing a black t-shirt, with a checkered vest. Asano chose to go with a nice pair of blue jeans and running shoes. On top of all this, that bulge in his breathes made her for some reason even more attracted to him. Why is this happening to me? She thought, worried about where her thoughts may lead. On that note they left their apartment and started their date. Asano decided to use this chance to get to know Nagisa. Hopefully he will come to know her as a friend before anything as serious as a lover. There is this nice dinner about 20 minutes from here, want to go there? Asano tried to ask as normally as he could. He then looked down at Nagisa to try and see her expression. That sounds good, she said, trying not to fidget at his touch. While walking to the dinner, Nagisa decided to ask him what was on her mind the whole time. How do you think you can overcome your father like this? Nagisa asked, anxious to hear an answer. Asano turned his face towards her and told her, I will tell you when we get to the dinner, he said with a thin smile. After they got to the dinner and ordered their food, Asano began to explain. Right now my father thinks I am following his orders, he said, leaning forward. What did he order you to do? Nagisa asked, worried to hear the answer. He ordered me to bring you to class and no matter what it took, he said very calmly. Nagisa on the other hand started to look slightly worried. With that done they would lose their source of confidence, he said, raising his hands up but keeping his elbows on the table. But soon, once he completely lets his guard down, we will unite classes A and E, he said, sitting straight again. Once we do, all the other classes will join and we can start a small uprising, he said, making the world's smallest violin. With every last student behind me I can crush his precious system and his inhuman ideals, he said with clear frustration in his voice. Nagisa began to shudder at the thought of the chaos she wishes to ensue. Are you sure? She asked, in concern for his safety and the safety of others if he tries it. She could tell that he knew what she was thinking when she asked him that. If you're worried about my safety there is no need to worry, he said, chuckling, rubbing her head. Asano then decided to make the conversation a bit less serious. You know, after all this time I still don't know much about you, he said, half closing his eyelids. Well, what do you want to know? Nagisa asked, not wanting him to know about Koro-sensei. Because she knew what would happen to him and her if she did. How about, what is your favorite food or maybe your favorite color? Asano asked, genuinely trying to become her friend. Well, if I had to choose I guess my favorite food is parfaits, she said, drooling a little at the thought of the parfait she just ordered. Asano noticed this and decided to wipe the corner of her mouth clean for her. This made her blush. Sorry, she said very meekly. Don't worry, besides if anything it was kind of cute, he said, smiling. That is when he realized what it sounded like to her and saw her fiddling with her fingers. Anyway, what is your favorite color then? He asked, hoping to make things less awkward. Fortunately for him this worked and Nagisa stopped playing with her fingers. It's red if I had to choose one, she said, putting her index finger to her chin. Oh really? I always figured it would be blue, you know, since you wear a lot of it, he said, pointing out her dress and the blue vest she always wears to school. Yeah, you would think that, but I've always found red to be much more vibrant, she said, holding out her flat hand towards him with her palm facing up towards the ceiling. Besides, red symbolizes things like love and courage, she said with a practically glowing smile. Those are nice thoughts, but as for me, when I see red I can sadly only think about Akabane's irrational violence, he said in a very light tone. This caused them both to laugh. Unfortunately I feel the same way sometimes too, she said, trying her best not to giggle between every word. Then their food came and they had lunch before moving on. Then Asano decided to take her to a bookstore to see what kind of literature she liked to read. Yup, that's right people, that are his plans. Also a little warning, things will get slightly steamy if you are all lucky. Chapter 6. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. When they got to the bookstore Asano could not believe his eyes. Instead of going to the romance section right away like he predicted, she went somewhere surprising. She went straight into the comic book section, which surprised not just him but also half the store. I did not realize you were into such things as these comics, Asano said as he began to kneel next to her. I love Sonic Ninja, Nagisa said, bursting at the seams with joy at the newly released comic. This made him raise an eyebrow, being unable to believe Nagisa was hiding this side. Asano thought that this was an interesting side of Nagisa that he did not realize existed till now. But it did make quite a bit of sense to him considering how selfless she tends to be. Even so, he could not imagine her jumping into the action to save the day. If anything, he could imagine her as the victim calling out to the hero to save her. This thought made him chuckle. This however got Nagisa's attention. "What is so funny, Asano?" Nagisa asked him, confused as to why he would laugh at a time like this. "I find it funny that you have such a childish side to you. Considering how serious you carry yourself most of the time," he said, unable to stop himself from chuckling. "Also that you are the comic book section dressed like you are now," he stated, giving her a once-over. This made her realize that she way too overdressed to be in the comic book section. At least the way she normally dresses, she can pass for an elite school otaku. "Oh, that's right," she said as it fully dawned on her how out of place she looked. "No need to worry, after all you are enjoying yourself, right?" he asked. Asano was concerned that he said something wrong and offended her, or worse, made her uncomfortable than she was before. "Oh yeah, of course I am," she said in a slight panic to answer him that was clearly obvious. "I'm glad then. So, how about we pick you up a few comics and go catch a movie," he said, giving her an awkward smile. She thought it was cute that he was getting as nervous as she was. Nagisa could not believe how nice he actually was to others when not having to keep up his "I am superior to you" appearance. "Sounds great," she said as she could not stop herself from grinning ear to ear. This made his heart and the heart of probably every person in there who saw it flutter. Within a few minutes she decided on which comics she wanted and they went to the cashier to pay. But since Asano was paying, or rather his father was paying, she only got 3. The new official Sonic Ninja comic and 2 new manga she heard were good. One was a sports manga and the other was a sci-fi adventure. What they did not know was that Class E's own Queen Otaku Sumire Hara was there and saw them. When they left, Sumire decided to follow them to be safe, a choice she would soon regret for the rest of her life. She followed them to the movie theater and bought a ticket for the same movie they were watching. Which was unfortunately her least favorite, a romantic comedy. Oh God, is what she thought as she hoped with all her heart this was not really going to be a romantic comedy. The mushy CRP is what she hated most, especially when they try to mix comedy in with it. "At least I can focus on them the whole time and tune out the movie," she whispered to herself under her breath. She was getting sick to her stomach, and not just because of the movie. They were acting so lovey-dovey she could not tell if it was real or not. Either way, she could not help but think they looked cute together, minus the cross-dressing, that is. "Do you feel that someone is watching us?" Nagisa asked Asano under her breath. She then looked all around for someone suspicious, yet she could not find anyone. This would include most of her former classmates, sadly enough. "Yeah, but I do not see anyone," he said, looking around himself to double-check. Yet he too could not notice anyone even mildly suspicious. "How about we go home and just spend the day watching movies at home?" Asano asked Nagisa, whispering into her ear. She nodded and they headed out of the theater to the movie rental store. Sumire followed them out despite wasting her money on the movie ticket. Nagisa and Asano got 4 or 5 movies and headed back home. Unaware who it was that was following them back home. "Nagisa, let's take the next alley on our right," he whispered into her ear. Within a minute they turned right into the alley, prepared to deal with their unknown stalker. Why did they turn into this alley? She could not finish what she was about to say. This was due to Asano wrapping his arm around her neck, cutting off her air circulation. "Who the hell are you?" Asano growled at her furiously. She struggled against him but failed to get free from his iron grip. "Asano, stop." Nagisa put her hands on his arm, trying to loosen his grip. This made him raise an eyebrow, but still he decided to loosen his grip. Even so, he still would not let go just to be safe. "She is one of my classmates from Class E," so he decided to let go of her. But before Nagisa could ask her why she was following them, she ran off. Chapter 7. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this the following Monday in Class E. No one could believe what they were hearing. Asano listened to Nagisa when he asked him to let you go. Koro-sensei exclaimed. This surprised everyone. Usually he is so level-headed. But this time he was really freaked out by the sudden turn of events. This doesn't make sense. Karma said, holding his chin, thinking. After a minute or so of silence he spoke again. Why did Asano ever set his sights on Nagisa in the first place? This question made everyone deadly silent. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, so you could hear even a drop of sweat hit the ground. Is it not obvious? Koro-sensei said, with green and yellow stripes, already knowing the answer. What do you mean? Karma asked. Fairly said that he did not just say it. We all care for Nagisa in some way, right? He said, posing the question to the class. Everyone nodded, agreeing that he was right. We started to make our way up the food chain, he stated, as though they were just wild animals. This disrupted the principal's natural order he created for his students. This is when the facts finally hit home for them, as Sujino would put it. It is our entire fault he is going through this. Sujino said, placing his face on his desk. But something still does not feel right about all this. Karma said as he got up from his seat. He made his way to Koro-sensei at the front of the class and cleared his throat. It is as if you know the truth but for some reason are not telling us, he said in a solemn tone. This accusation caused everyone to worry, and yes, that includes Terasaka people. This is the kind of bullshit I am talking about, he screamed, slamming his hands onto the desk. Is Nagisa in actual danger or not? He yelled out to what seemed like all his classmates. Karma walked up to Terasaka and stared into his eyes for what seemed like forever. No matter what Asano is planning, if Nagisa is beside him he will be in danger, he stated very plainly. Therefore we need to stop Asano now. Before it is too late, he said in a very angry tone. Well, how do you propose we stop him then without hurting Nagisa? Terasaka questioned. I have planned for that. Karma said, wearing signature smug look. He lost this look for what seemed like ages, but for once now they are glad he has it. While this was going on, everyone was making their way to the main building. This included a certain Strawberry and Blueberry that no one walking by could help but stare at. Uncertain at whether it was two boys or a boy and girl walking to school together. So how do you think you will fare on today's test? Asano asked Choirs of whether or not her friend thinks she can do better than him. Thanks to the help of you and the others I'm ready for anything a class can throw at me, she said with a goofy grin of confidence. Hey, do you mind if I ask you something? Asano said, worried he might make her upset with asking it. Sure, what is it? Nagisa asked, tilting her head, confused as to why he looks so worried. Are you sure you do not regret betraying your friends? He asked, bracing himself for an upset Nagisa. First off, I had only like 3 friends in there, she said, raising one index finger. This surprised him to hear this, considering Nagisa is the center of E-class's strength to defy them. Secondly, everyone in there, including my friends, always took me as a joke. They never really respected me or believed in me. This made Asano's heart break a little on the inside. Not because of what she said or how depressed she said it. But because he knows how she feels and therefore knows her pain. His father only uses him as a tool as well, never truly putting faith in him. Even so, just like her, his classmates never saw who he truly was. Except for the 4 virtuosos, that is, they were his only genuine friends. Something Nagisa has never had, which is where he is more fortunate than she is. Wow, was all Asano could manage to say to this revelation. Despite this fact though, he truly wanted to say more, lots more. But unfortunately was unable to find the right words to say. What do you mean, wow? Nagisa asked, slightly ticked off at his response. This is when he could tell his response was far from what she expected. What I meant was I always had more than I thought, after hearing you just now, he said, unable to hold back the sympathy in his voice. Nagisa then hugged him tightly. Confused, he looked down to her to ask why. Thank you for understanding my pain and helping me carry it, she said, unable to look him in his eyes. He patted her head, not needing to ask her any more questions. It was a pleasure to get to more about my new friend, he said before she let go, and they continued on their way to school. At this time a certain yellow octopus was watching them from afar in his camouflage mode. As much as I want to help them, this is a hurdle my students must overcome on their own, he whispered under his breath. Nagisa heard this and turned around unsure of what just happened. Asano looked to her with slight concern that she noticed someone following them. Most likely one of the Class E delinquents like on Saturday. Chapter 8 Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Her morning started as usual with her taking today's turn to shower first. As she put on her school uniform, Asano called her. "Breakfast is ready," he shouted to her. A sound she has grown to like hearing in the morning. While she started eating, Asano went to change into his uniform as well. While she was eating, she felt strange, as if she was not alone. But that made no sense. The only one here except her was Asano. She ran to the window to look outside, but no one was there. Asano walked in but decided it would be better just to ask the obvious. "Did you remember your hallucination medicine?" he asked as calm as he could. "Yes, I did," but then Asano gave her a questioning look. "Maybe," she asked him, beginning to doubt herself when it came to her medication. So Asano took her into her room to check her pill bottle. "It says that you can take 2 in the morning," he said, taking out one pill just in case she already took one and it just was not enough today. But even so, the morning continued to feel rather unusual compared to the past 2 weeks. She was sure that someone was following her but unsure of what to do. Nagisa thought she heard someone whispering and turned around unsure of what just happened. Asano looked to her with slight concern, hoping that no one was following them. Most likely one of her former Class E delinquent classmates like on Saturday. Even so, he was confident he could handle it like last time. "Asano, I know what you are thinking," she said in a half-serious tone. This caused Asano to raise an eyebrow at this sudden change of attitude. This was not a Class E student, it felt more like an older perverted man, she said, shivering a little. This made Asano a lot more concerned now for her, especially considering she works at a maid cafe. Koro-sensei overheard this and began to cry when he was called old. This is unfortunate for him because Karma was right beside him, or rather was, until Nagisa turned around. He then went behind the phone pole while Koro-sensei used his camouflage to hide himself. "Looks like I am not the only one that can make you cry, teach," he said, grinning at him. This crushed him even worse than when Nagisa called him old, except with Karma he is used to it by now. This is when Koro-sensei realized that Karma was right there. "Karma. WW, what are you doing here?" he shouted, not realizing that Nagisa and Asano heard him. He panicked and got out of there at Mach 20 speed. Asano may not know what that meant, but Nagisa did, and she did not like it. "Looks like Akabane hired a professional to follow you for him," Asano said, pulling her close to him. Nagisa on the other hand knew what Mach 20 speed looked like and knew what she saw. It was her Koro-sensei keeping his tiny beady eyes on her. "Wait, what is this?" Asano said, picking up a very large teacher's gown. This made Nagisa's eyes widen as this confirmed what she feared. Asano noticed this and turned her to face him, despite how shocked she clearly was. "It is going to be all right. We will tell our parents and get notes from today's classes from the others," he said slowly and as calming as he could. They made their way to the school to tell his father and then her mother what happened. After that they ran to school even though they would not be late by walking. But they felt it was safer if they got there as soon as possible. While this happened, 2 things were happening. One was a confrontation and the other deep thinking. "So Koro-sensei, do you mind telling me why you have been lying to the whole class?" Karma said, crossing his arms. He began to sweat under his student's gaze, not realizing an important fact. "Also," he said, covering his eyes but still peeking through the space between 2 of his fingers. Koro-sensei screamed like a girl and turned invisible, but forgot to turn his own blushing cheeks invisible. "Cece, can you please not tell anyone about this?" he said very shakenly. "Why should I not tell them, you melon's loving smiley face emoji?" he said very solemnly, raising both his eyebrows. "You said you would not get involved, but here I saw you following them just now," he said, clearly expecting an answer. "What I tell you, do not tell anyone else about Nagisa, okay?" he said very sternly. Karma did not like this but agreed to not tell anyone what he was about to hear. "I am about to tell you the truth of Nagisa that only I and his mother know. Whisper, 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 and whisper. Karma could not believe what he heard. At the school building, Nakamura was just within the trees talking to her. Why didn't I tell him how I felt about him? She shouted, punching a tree. Now Asano has taken you from me, and maybe for good. She said, sliding down the tree with her back against it. She sighed, not knowing what to do but to hope. Her hope was that they would have new information on the situation today. While at the main building, the principal was shocked by the sudden news. As well as the sight of the familiar teacher's gown his son laid down in front of him. Some was following us today along with Karma Akabane. He stated, clearly worried. His father, on the other hand, as well as Nagisa, was shocked, but for a different reason. They both knew that the assassination classroom was at risk of being brought into broad daylight. Something neither of them could allow to happen, nor would want to happen. Chapter 9. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Karma could not believe what he was hearing. For the first time in his life he is speechless. For the next few minutes he tried to ask his teacher the millions of questions that was running through his head. But after the few minutes of failing to speak, he was finally able to ask him a single question. Then why did you, just, why? He uttered, unable to vocalize his question. But it seemed that his teacher could tell what he wanted to ask him. It was not the right time yet for me to do so, he said very solemnly. This was unlike his usual upbeat tone that he uses for even the worst of news. At the principal's office, Asano was told the biggest lie his father ever told him. I do not know who he might have hired, he said with for once grimace. But as long as you two stay in a group you should be safe, he said, sitting straight again. I will contact the police and get them to assign you to a watchdog of sorts, he said, making the police sound below him. But what about my job at the cafe? She said, bringing up the elephant in the room. You can still work there to make sure they do not catch on to us, he said, frowning at the trouble this girl causes him and his son. That being said, try to work just a few hours here and there less, he said, clearly annoyed by her need to work. But still manages to be impressed by her ability and drive to support her. Yes, she will be a great help to his son when he takes the reins from him. Very well, father, then we will proceed to class now, he said as both he and Nagisa bowed to him. His father nodded his head as to say they have his permission to do so. After they start walking to class and are far away from his father's office, they began to whisper to one another as so not to be heard by the cameras. Why did you let him walk all over you like that? He asked her, concerned for her state of mind. If I did not let him walk all over me, we would stomp on Yugakushu, she said, concerned for her friend. What did you just call me? He asked, confused since she was calling him by his last name all this time. We are friends, are we not? She asked him, waiting for him to answer. He nodded without thinking, but knew that he gave her the answer he needed to give her. Friends do not need to call each other by their last names, she stated, poking his cheek playfully. This caused Asano to blush, something only she can achieve. While at the main building, Itona had an announcement to make. Listen everyone, we need to discuss something important, he said, clapping his hands together. This caused everyone to stop chatting and look to the front. I made Ritsu her new body, he said in his usual monotone voice. Everyone suddenly jumped up from their seats, shouting at the top of their lungs. He then clapped his hands together again, which caused them to go silent once again. I made the body, but the circuit board is made in only one place in the world, he said with a deadpan expression on his face. This caused everyone to worry when they realized that for once he showed emotions. The only place that makes them is owned by Asano's father, he said, looking to the ground. The cruel reality dawned on them, crushing what little hope they had left, except for Karma, of course. Furthermore, they are on the tightest level of security the facility has, he said, making them feel worse than ever before. So would I love to break and enter, Karma said from the back row, grinning like his usual maniac self. This caused everyone to look to him for answers. That being said, we will need to take time and plan it, he said, placing his chin on his hands as he put his elbows on his desk. So let's start planning already, everyone shouted at him in unison. Now class, we still have to put at least half your focus on your studies. Koro-sensei said, getting angry glares from all his students. Just think about it, he said, squiring under their gaze. Do you really think Nagisa would want you all to throw away the academic progress we made up till now? He asked them with yellow and green stripes. This caused everyone to stop glaring at him and look down in shame. That being said, half the day for the rest of the week can be put into planning your little escapade, he said, going back to pure yellow. That is when Beach Sensei walked in with a grin on her face that they did not ever think she was capable of. I can help you all with planning the infiltration and exacting it, she said, walking to the front. Why do you suddenly care so much about Nagisa? Karma asked, making the class feel suspicious. Even so, they still felt like they wanted to trust her and decided that they could. Let's just say I knew Nagisa long before I came to this school, she said, huffing in frustration. This caused the whole class to freak out, asking her questions like a machine gun. I will not say anything else on the subject until we save Nagisa, she shouted at her students with pleading in her voice. They decided that they could wait for her answer, besides it was clear Nagisa also needed to be here for this as well. Chapter 10. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. The week was rather normal to say the least for Nagisa and Asano. Except of course for the police officers who were following them wherever they went. Hey Gakushu, she asked as she turned her head to him while they were laying on the couch reading. When she suddenly broke the silence, he turned to face her. Even though their faces were inches away from one another, neither felt awkward. What is it? He said, concerned about what is racing through her mind. I think we need to tell them all before they go too far and hurt you, she said, putting her hands together. Even so, she pleaded as best as she could, hoping as much as she could that he would listen to reason. Unfortunately for her, she deep down already knew what she would say. They already went too far hiring someone to follow you, he stated while putting his hands on her shoulders. As much as she did not like to admit it, he was right, there was no way they would listen to reason now. You're right, besides we can't let your plan go down the drain, she said, knowing she was unfortunately right. 'Cause if his plan did go sideways now, then he would suffer beyond healing. After all, according to him, his father was no stranger to violence, especially with him. And if this plan was revealed to his father, to say he would suffer would be an understatement. But while this was going on, E-Class was finishing their plans for the big heist. Ritsu was coordinating the information between all 27 of them. But unannounced to the students, there were two sharing an NTMT moment together. Came Friday and the police decided they were out of danger, so they stopped following them. That being said, they were still warned to be careful whenever they go out. As Nagisa was done her shift, she went out the front with Asano closing the door after her. Are you sure you are fine with sitting there all afternoon watching me? She said, turning to him. Of course I am. Besides, how could I miss you in a maid outfit? He asked very teasingly. She of course got upset and puffed her cheeks out at him. You pervert, she said, childishly hitting his arm. This made him chuckle. You are so lucky I can forgive you so easily, she said, crossing her arms. She then sighed and held on to that strong arm of his on her right. Wait a minute, what is she saying? He is just a friend, right? Now unsure of even her own feelings, she turned her head up to look at him. Am I really falling for someone who was once my enemy? She thought to herself. This is seriously a messed up situation she got herself in now. Even so, this somehow still feels right to her, despite the chaos her life was in now. When they got home, Asano offered her the first shower of the night. She, glad to clear her head, decided to accept his kind offer. While she was bathing, Asano could not help but get slightly vulgar thoughts, as his dad would call them. The image of Nagisa wiping her naked body with a towel was just too intoxicating. Nagisa's own two hands moving ever so gently across her petite and nimble body. Right now they were cleaning all of her perfect curves, the bubbles just barely covering her body. That's it. I'm going in, he said, standing up suddenly. As he made his way to the bathroom, he began to strp. He took off one piece of clothing at a time until he was standing in front of the bathroom door. He was completely naked and ready to give all his feelings. He threw open the door, which startled the brunette showering. She poked her head out of the curtain to see what was happening. What are yo dash? She was unable to finish as she was covering her eyes. She did not expect to see him naked, even so she wanted to peek through her fingers for another look. While this was happening, another pair was somewhere else enjoying the night. She is quite appealing, isn't she? Irina turned to the giant yellow octopus beside her. Yes, indeed, our daughter have come quite far, he said, turning to her. She reminds a lot like, you know what I mean, he asked her, knowing what he would hear. Yes, she is always learning from those around her, isn't she? She asked him back. He gave her the nod that she also knew she would receive. That being said, she definitely gets her looks from you. Well, when you were human at least, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. And unfortunately that makes her an even bigger target for delinquents, he stated before sighing. But still, how long can we wait before we tell them all the truth? He asked her, unsure himself of what to do in this situation. We can't tell them, Nagisa has to be the one to tell them the truth, she said with slight despair. You know, even to this day I regret giving her to my little sister, she said, looking down. He then tightened his tentacles around her waist, giving just a slight squeeze. Still, though, it was nice what you are doing for my friend. Teaching her students in her stead, she said, laughing lightly. Never thought in a million years you would become a teacher, she said, looking up at him. Well, it is the least I can do for you since I will be leaving you soon, he said, sighing. No, it is not, because you will live through this. You will become human again. You will marry me. You will become a proper father and husband, she shouted, needing to catch her breath afterwards. Irina, he said, unable to continue as due to the fact that out her finger to his mouth. She then buried her face into his chest, just wanting to hear his heartbeat once more. Yes, this heartbeat is the only one who can bring her back to her senses and calm her down. Chapter 11. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. You are right. You always were, Koro-sensei said, resting his head on hers. That was a future that he really wanted to live, see, more than any other. Very soon I will be a father and you will be a mother, he stated before he picked her up and brought her to their makeshift bed in the storage shed. Recap of last time beaches. Or should I say beach sensei Jr. While she was bathing, Asano could not help but get slightly vulgar thoughts, as his dad would call them. The image of Nagisa wiping her naked body with a towel was just too intoxicating. Nagisa's own two hands moving ever so gently across her petite and nimble body. Right now they were cleaning all of her perfect curves, the bubbles just barely covering her body. That's it. I'm going in, he said, standing up suddenly. As he made his way to the bathroom, he began to strp. He took off one piece of clothing at a time until he was standing in front of the bathroom door. He was completely naked and ready to give all his feelings. He threw open the door, which startled the bluinette showering. She poked her head out of the curtain to see what was happening. What are yo dash? She was unable to finish as she was covering her eyes. She did not expect to see him naked, even so she wanted to peek through her fingers for another look. And now back your regularly scheduled smut sponsored by Who the F Cares. Asano opened the curtain and walked straight in, grabbing her shoulders to pull her close. As she opened her eyes, he pulled her into his arms, wrapping them around her waist and head. I am sorry, Nagisa, but I just cannot hold back anymore, he said in a husky voice. This caused her to loosen up and look up at him. As she saw his eyes, she felt that this was somehow right. So she decided to wrap her arms around his neck. This was very pleasing to Asano. Why are you apologizing? You still have to do me, she whispered in the most stuck tone she could. She pressed her lips hard against his, catching him in a searing hot kiss. He opened his mouth and allowed her to slip her tongue into his mouth. This made him into her throat, causing her to back into his. He began to run one of his hands up and down her inner thigh, while the other one was pushing her head further into the kiss. They broke the kiss to catch their breaths as they looked into one another's eyes. She started to breathe at the sensation of his hands running up and down her thighs. Seeing that she was close to coming, he decided to stop so he could tease her a bit more. He turned her around and wrapped one arm around her waist. Asano grabbed her bottle of body wash and started to rub her melons with it. She let out a sharp cry as he began to play with her hardening nubs. He started to nibble on her left earlobe, causing her to squirm even more. Nagisa could not even begin to comprehend the new sensations she was experiencing. Deku was more daring than she ever thought, and she liked it. After a few minutes of this, he decided to take this out of the shower. But he did not take her too far, since he decided to lay her on their bathroom rug. He lifted up her thighs, revealing her heaven that her panties have always hidden. Asano let his tongue dive right in, rubbing against her inner walls. She started to wail a perfect melody that was being blocked out only by the sound of the shower that continued to run behind them. He tasted her and she tasted delicious, better than any dessert he ever ate. Her juices were even better than he ever thought they would be. Within about 20 or so minutes she finally came, and with such grace. Her back arched and let out a long and ceasy voice, until she finished. Nagisa's splendid legs hit the ground, lying in wait for him with the rest of her body. She then curled up, taking very short breaths, unable to open her eyes. "I do not care if I cannot continue, just satisfy it already," she said, smiling at him. So he did what she said after quickly turning off the shower. She felt hot searing pain, but only for a moment, before feeling pleasure. Nagisa could only mm at this point, but that was enough for Asano. Asano then began to move back and forth, hitting ball deep every time. He then picked her up and brought her to her room, where they both collapsed in exhaustion and joy. They barely managed to crawl under the covers before falling asleep in one another's arms. Good night was all they could manage before the darkness overtook their vision. But while this was happening, everyone from Class E was getting ready for tomorrow night's mission. That's right, starting Sunday Ritsu will finally have her own body. Finally her boyfriend can put his arms around her. Not to mention his strong, slimy, appealing sky blue tentacles. Chapter 12. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Are you guys ready? It is now or never. Itona said into his earpiece. They all said yes, one by one in class order, notifying him that the plan was a go. Kanzaki and Kayano strolled up to the security guard, acting drunk. "Hey, what you two doing here?" the guard said, unsure of whether or not they were underage to have been drinking. "Oh come on, are you saying your bar is closed already?" Kayano said, pouting. All I wanted to do was continue the night," Kanzaki said, pretending to cry like a surly drunk. This caused the guard to come closer, checking to see if she was alright. "Are you Al Dash?" But before he could finish, Hinata came out from the bushes and knocked him out with a quick kick to the jaw. "Alright, he is out of sight of the cameras and out cold," she said, speaking into her earpiece. "Terasaka. Yoshida. Get him in the bushes and bound now," she said, looking around. Less than a minute later those two came out and carried him off to a far tree in the center of the cluster. They then proceeded to tie him to it. After gaying him with his own breathes, of course, since after all this is Terasaka we are talking about here. "Alright, we got his keys and access card. Phase 1 success, entry requirements acquired," Itona said, relaying the info to everyone else. "Now the fun part comes. B&E, Karma said to Nakamura, who was squatting beside him. The blonde girl only rolled her eyes and smirked back at him. With this, the elite thief team they have assembled ran in. "Everyone. Roll call." Itona yelled to everyone's frequency. "Karma is on duty and ready to kick butt," Karma said, running ahead. He was the guide since he memorized the map of the place. "Rio is here and ready to steal your geeky CRP for you," Rio said, running right behind him. She was the team's medic, since she is the only one in class with any medical training whatsoever. "Terasaka here, and as usual I have to do your dirty work, Itona," Terasaka yelled into the earpiece. This caused everyone to wince due to the static interference it caused. He is the team's muscle, and hopefully he won't have to do his assigned job. "Kotaro here, and slow down for me already, you guys." Kotaro shouted at them through the earpiece. He is the team's security cracker, just in case they need more than what they took off the guard. And to everyone's surprise, someone completely unexpected came running up behind them. It was Itona. He is actually joining the front lines. The whole class shouted in unison. This was unexpected even by Koro-sensei's standards, and it was pretty hard to surprise him. Itona, and nothing will stop me from getting a piece of Ritsu's sweet robotic butt. Itona shouted. Not realizing that he shouted it until after Nakamura spoke up. So you have a robot FTSH, huh? No surprise there. She said, giggling. Now everyone knew why he finished her so fast. He already started building her before he told them. Well, I hope you gave her body only C-sized melons. She said, kind of glad herself he was not a melons freak like their teacher. Otherwise her body would just be too awkward to look at during class. Especially her, she may like Nagisa, but she still likes to play with her classmates' bub from time to time. She thought this blushing but quickly refocusing back on the mission like Itona. They quickly went around back and used the guard's security card to enter. Alright, we have to get to the south end of the facility and take an emergency staircase to the basement. Karma said, running quietly at a pace that even Kotaro could not complain about. This is where they faced their first obstacle. There were two guards smoking by the window in front of the emergency staircase. SHT, just when things looked like they were getting better for them. What are we going to do? Terasaka said, knowing this was a delicate situation to be in. This is when he looked up and noticed something. Look up there, an air vent. He said, pointing up to the ceiling. This drew everyone's attention to where he was pointing. Good eye, meathead. Karma said, grinning at Itona, which even the ever so dense Itona can tell what he is thinking. No way. I'm claustrophobic thanks to Shiro and his training. He said, waving his hands in the air defensively. Just great, he is telling us this. SHT, now of all times they all could not help but think. Plan B, Karma said, pointing to Itona and Nakamura. SWCH clothes, he said, confusing them. Look at the guards' phones, they are total pedophiles. He said as they all noticed his wallpaper in the circular mirror behind them attached to the ceiling. Also they are into crossdressers. His smirk grew. Knowing Itona would hate him for a while for making him do this. Nakamura strpped, instantly revealing everything to the boys. Well, are we going to do this or what? She said, clearly having no sense of shame. The boys on the other hand had to look away to not get nosebleeds. After swapping clothes, Itona revealed what was under his skirt and playfully skipped around the corner. The guards could not help but follow him into their trap, that is. When they turned the corner, all they saw were two delinquents, a nerd, and a naked middle school girl punching them out. That was easy. Nakamura said as took her clothes back from Itona and changed back into them. With that they made their way down the stairwell into the basement, after tying the guards up and stealing their keys and cards as well. Chapter 13. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. They finally got to the point of no return. It was either succeed or get arrested. Unfortunately for them, Karasuma had already warned them. He could not help them if they got caught, that is if they failed. Which we would not, since we need this to work out for us. Otherwise bye to Nagisa's only chance at freedom from Asano. Alright, we hit the basement now, we have a straight shot to the north end. He said, confusing everyone. But then why didn't we head there immediately? Terasaka asked, confused. When I saw the map I noticed a lot of turns if we went from the main hallways. Karma said lazily. And with the more turns the bigger the risk of running into guards. He said, crossing his arms. The basement also has the least security on the way there. He stated the most obvious. They ran for what seemed like forever, but in reality it was only a few minutes. Jesus Christ. Terasaka whispered. How long is this DMN tunnel? He started to say too loudly. Shut up before we get caught. Nakamura hissed at him. This finally made Terasaka shut up for the first time that day. Alright, we are here now. Karma whispered as he turned back to them. They all turned to see where he was looking, a set of doors. Get out the key cards, he said, holding out his hand. Kotaro handed him the cards and they made their way up the stairs. When they got topside they had ran quickly down the corridors to the lab. They tried all the keys and the cards but none worked. Oh come on, Terasaka said in frustration, ready to hit the door. But fortunately for them Kotaro stood in his way to stop him. Hold it Terasaka, this is why I am here, Kotaro said very proudly. He took out his laptop and started to hack into the lock. If only Ritsu was here to help me, but unfortunately we cannot risk her creators finding out about this, he said, sighing. After a few minutes they finally got access to the lab but unfortunately ran into a bit of trouble right after. Someone started to fire at them, and when this happened Terasaka got shot. But if he did not jump in its path the bullet would have hit Karma in the head. SHT dude, are you okay? Karma said, putting one arm under his. Terasaka shook his head yes, grinning. Nakamura immediately started to tend to his wound. Karma started to fire blanks at them to scare them into retreating. But before this he quickly slipped on a ski mask to cover his face. This gave Nakamura time to finish mending Terasaka. While she was doing this Kotaro was finishing the disabling of the security system and took the circuit board. They all put on the same black ski mask that Karma put on as soon as the shooting started. But then took out 2 plastic bottles and opened them. He passed one of them to Nakamura and she started to help her pour it all over the floor. Alright Red Leader, let's go, she said before dropping the last of the gasoline. Karma tossed her his lighter and nodded just as he tossed a smoke bomb at the guards. She lit it and tossed it as she and Karma ran down the stairs. Alright, let's get the hell out of here, Terasaka yelled as they ran down the way they came. They got to the top of the south wing and ran out the back. They heard sirens and split up, except for Terasaka and Nakamura. She brought him to her house to spend the night, thinking it was better not for his parents to see him with a bullet wound. While they were running away their principal was receiving a call. Oh. A break-in. By a mere group of 5 or and possibly kids, he said, spitting venom into every word. The head of security notifying him nearly fainted from shock. I will be there immediately, be prepared to give me a more thorough report when I arrive, he demanded in a very solemn tone. With that he hung up, making the man scramble around from guard to guard getting all the little details he possibly could. Looks like Class E is up to something, he said, smirking at this thought. Looks like the game has finally started to get interesting, he said, squeezing one of his hands shut. He started to laugh. How amusing this will turn out to be, he said as he walked out to his car. Back at Nakamura's house was a very injured and incapacitated Terasaka. Dear God, I know I should sleep on the floor, but screw it, I am just too tired, she said as she lay next to Terasaka. She yawned as she wrapped her arms around his neck using his chest as a pillow. Looks like you are an even better pillow than a shield, she said, giggling. Dawn came and her parents were very surprised to see what they saw. They saw their daughter sharing her bed with a half-naked boy, who has a bandage going over his chest. Honey, please tell me this is just a dream, said her mother, turning towards her father. I would like to, but unfortunately I am also seeing it, so it must be real, he replied, unable to look away. Nakamura started to wake up and immediately regretted giving in to last night's exhaustion. I can explain, I swear, she said, raising her hands in defense. Her parents just backed out of her room, not even wanting to risk making it any more awkward. Just great, she sighed in frustration, slamming her arms on her bed. This managed to wake up the sleeping Terasaka with much confusion. What happened? Nakamura, where are we? He asked her, very confused. My bedroom, genius, she said, crossing her, tilting her head towards the open window. OSHT, that's right, she snuck me through her window, remembering last night's events. Chapter 14. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Today was the day Itona activated the future Ritsu Horaibe. Alright everyone, in a few minutes Ritsu will wake up in this new body for the first time, he said, clapping his hands and tentacles together. The robot body started to hum after he opened up the back of her neck and pressed a few buttons. "Hello everyone, how do I look?" she asked eagerly. "You're freakin' appealing. Itona, way to go," Miyahara said, giving him a thumbs up. "You really think I look appealing?" Ritsu said, clasping her hands together. She then hugged an Itona with a rather large bulge in his breathes. One that the automaton could not feel, or rather enjoyed, if that was why she was blushing. "Looks like someone got carried away when building her," Nakamura cooed. This made him freak out and back away from her, which quite frankly disappointed her. "Ahem," Karma said loud enough to scare everyone into getting serious again. "Now that she has a body, can we actually get her close enough to upload a copy of her into his phone again?" he said, making them realize the difficult task that lies ahead for them. "There is an assembly tomorrow, so we can at least get Ritsu in range of him there," said Okajima. This sudden spark of intelligence impressed and disturbed them all. "Looks like you do have a brain in there after all," Karma said, giving him a hard nudge. Everyone could not help but laugh at this, all except Koro-sensei and Irina. "Looks like they do not realize what tricks the principal may pull tomorrow," he said, looking towards Irina. "There is no way the principal will just stand by and let them finish their plan," she said, knowing full well how this will end. "Maybe so, but should we tell the other students the truth about our Nagisa?" Koro-sensei said, unsure of what to do. "What do you mean, the other students?" Irina asked, knowing full well what he would tell her. "I have already told Karma about Nagisa's true gender as well as my relationship to her," he said, with an angry blonde staring dagger at him. "But do not worry, I did not mention you," he said, squirming under her gaze. "You told him what?" she yelled, getting everyone's attention. Oh, I was not whispering, was I?" she asked, concerned of whether or not they would remember her earlier promise. No, you were not," he said, snickering, getting him a RBB knife to the face. But as usual, he is simply too fast, which only set her off even more. "So Beach-sensei, you mind telling us how you know Nagisa?" "Oh, and while you added you too, Koro-sensei," Karma said lazily. "Yeah, Beach-sensei, tell us," Megu said, with all the other girls jumping in. "That's right. Besides, you said you would tell us the truth after the mission," Hinano said, pointing a finger at her teacher. "You're right, you all deserve to know," she said, taking a deep breath. "Nagisa is mine and the octopus's child," she said, pointing her thumb towards their homeroom teacher. "What, the entire class, except for Karma of course," exclaimed. "Did not realize you liked to star in Tentacle Pawn Blondie," Karma said, smirking. "Shut it, you brat," she said, barely being held back by the octopus in the room. "He was once human, but the circumstances of mine and Nagisa's separation, well, they're complicated to say the least," she said, looking down. "Oh, come on, teach, if you cannot open up to your students about it, then why ever tell us anything at all?" Ryo asked, knowing the answer already. "Very well, it happened about 14 years ago. Me and Karuto Hayateto, and yes, that was his real name, boys and girls." This revelation shocked the class to say the least. "Why did your parents name you cold-hearted, especially since you are so, you?" Isegai asked, trying not to step on eggshells. "They were both assassins and wanted me to follow in their footsteps. The name was a reminder of what an assassin should always be. What they wanted me to become over time," he said, looking down and for once sounding very unhappy. Isegai now regretted asking him why he was named what he was. "If you ladies can stop lollygagging for a second, can I continue?" she said, annoyed by how easily sidetracked her students could get. "It was a successful mission and we celebrated in a very passionate way, so to speak. 9 months later I gave BRTH to Nagisa," she said, as though it was nothing. "My sister had lost her child during BRTH shortly after, so I gave her Nagisa to replace the daughter she lost." This made the entire class as silent as she ever heard, so much so it startled her. "I was still a young assassin and knew that I would never be able to be there for my child," she said, stating a fact they all could have told her the first day they met. "My sister on the other hand was married, so at least Nagisa had a home," she said, on the verge of tears. Neither Nagisa nor my sister's husband knows the truth. Only I, she, and the doctor who delivered Nagisa know the truth, she said clearly on the verge of tears. Koro-sense then wrapped his tentacle around her, rubbing her back in small circles. The class could not believe what they were hearing. Nagisa's parents were both their teachers all along. They had to find out about Nagisa's suffering and constantly talk about it with us. Justice said very solemnly, staying quiet afterwards like the rest of the guys in class. Dear God, the pain they must have been in this whole time. Kayano said, bawling her eyes out along with the rest of the females in class. Do not everyone. Remember, that is why Itona made me this body, to save Nagisa, she said. Instantly uplifting everyone's spirits. Except the two teachers, of course. They could only present their students slim smiles. Chapter 15. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Today was the day of the school assembly and their chance to contact Nagisa. What they saw genuinely shocked them. Nagisa was popular. Jesus Christ. He has turned into an even bigger player than Maehara. Ryo exclaimed. Not being able to believe all those girls were actually interested in him. That's not fair. Okajima exclaimed in frustration at this sight. This earned him a painful nudge from Ritsu, which everyone was glad. Shut him up. Guys, there are problems. Ritsu said with a very concerned expression. This made everyone gulp, scared of what she would tell them next. First off, Nagisa has his phone out of range, most likely back in the classroom if we are lucky, she said. This made everyone concerned of if the next problem will be worse than the next. Secondly, the principal is currently holding a device that jams any and all radio waves. Her classmates knew what this meant. This means that I cannot send a copy of myself to his phone, she said, confirming their despairing thoughts. Thirdly, Nagisa seems to be on his guard around us. Ritsu stated very flatly. This really caught them off guard. What? That makes no sense. Sugino exclaimed, scratching his head. Just like him, everyone was trying to figure this out until the president started to speak. The next hour felt like months to them, the failures, the nobodies, E-class. But not anymore, as if they all had a mental connection. They all thought the same thing in that moment. Asano, you are gonna go down, they all thought to themselves in unison. After they get back to the satellite campus. We have no choice. We have to at least humiliate Asano. Terasaka said, slamming his hands on the desk. No, that's no good. I say we just send the BSTRD to the hospital. Sugino shouted while slamming his hands down as well. I say we just kill the BSTRD. After all, no one lays a hand on her and gets away with it. Karma said, very angry, scaring everyone. That being said, we should still try to get Ritsu into Nagisa's phone first to gather intel, he stated before yawning. Whoa, Karma, we can't kill Asano, that is going way too far. Kayano exclaimed, oh. Is that so? Then let's take it to a vote. Karma said, raising his hand. But before you vote for my idea, just think about it. How much longer do you think Nagisa can last? And with that, everyone voted to kill. Oh my. This is not good at all. Koro-sensei thought, worried they will regret this later. Even so, he himself had very little information on the matter and decided to let his students handle it. Are you seriously okay with them killing the principal's son? Irina shouted at him. This made Koro-sensei cringe before nodding yes. This caused Irina to storm off. This caught everyone's attention and made them rethink what they were about to do. She is right, we cannot kill him, said Isegai. Then what do we do, said a frustrated and exhausted Terasaka. I say we scare him into staying away from Nagisa, said Kirara Hazama with grin that made everyone jump. Although it does sound like the most sensible thing to do considering whom their target was. After all, Beach Sensei was right, they cannot get away with killing their principal's son. Alright, so it's decided. In 2 days we strike, said Karma, grinning his usual happy grin. And with that, everyone started planning, except for of course Kayano and Ryo, who opposed the plan earlier. Ryo pulled Kayano out of the class with only Karma paying them any attention. Even so, he must have thought they were not worth the effort of getting up. considering they left without him putting up any fight whatsoever. "Hey Keano, did you catch what Karma said?" Nakamura said, keeping it to a whisper. "What do you mean?" Keano said, holding her chin, recalling his exact words. Then Nakamura could swear she saw a light bulb appear above Keano's head. He said she. Keano nearly shouted if not Nakamura did not cover her mouth. "That is right," Nakamura said, pointing to her, looking her in the eyes. Also Beach-sensei said she gave Nagisa to her sister to replace her daughter. Nakamura said, causing Keano's eyes to widen. "I think Karma knows more than he is leading on," Nakamura said, clearly making Keano scared at the realization that he was using all of them. "Also I think Koro-sensei and Beach-sensei are also hiding even more information from all of us, including Karma." It is only when Nakamura said this did Keano realize how deep they were in. "But then that means," Keano started to say before going silent. "That means Nagisa may actually be a girl and she may actually be dating Asano of her own accord," Nakamura said, causing Keano to gasp. "Then what do we do?" Keano asked, concerned of whether or not they could actually do anything. "We warn her. And we prepare for when everyone discovers the truth," Namamura said very solemnly. With that they left the building and cut around the back so no one would see them out the window. While later that evening Nagisa's and Asano apartment was rung from the lobby. "Hello, who is this?" Nagisa said, confused as to who was ringing. "It's me and Keano, we came to warn you," Nakamura said before being buzzed up. "Do you think Asano will listen to us?" Keano asked just as he opened the door. "So long as Nagisa trusts you, I will also trust you," he said, motioning them to come in. As they sat down they could not believe what they were seeing. Nagisa in a sundress. "DMN, you really make me want to be a lesbian, Nagisa," Nakamura said, grinning. This made Nagisa squirm and Asano chuckle, which was actually quite heartwarming. Chapter 16. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. "So what is it you need to tell us?" Nagisa asked with much concern. "Karma has whipped all of E-class into a frenzy," Nakamura said, causing Nagisa and Asano to look at one another. "And worst of all, they are more than willing to kill Asano to get you back," she said, causing a scared silence. "Thanks for warning us, but I still need to know, does the rest of the class know my true gender?" Nagisa asked, worried how they might have reacted. "No, just us, Karma, and both Koro-sensei as well as Mississippi Irina," she said, making Nagisa confused. "There is something else you should know. Or rather, two things you need to know," she said this time, causing Asano to respond. "What do you mean by there are two things we need to know? How much of a mess did you come to us with?" Asano said, now officially done with Akabane's antics. First thing, Mississippi Irina managed to calm them down, but they still intend to cause him quite a bit of harm, Nakamura said, placing her hand over Nagisa's. Secondly, Koro-sensei and Irina-sensei are your real parents. The person who you think is your mom is actually your aunt, she said, staring at a horrified Nagisa. Nagisa then turned to Asano and said to him, "We need to tell them your plan." This caused the two friends to look at one another. Asano nodded, agreeing with her. Kakushu planned to cause a school-wide rebellion to overthrow his father's teaching methods. This surprised them. "Please stay away from everyone for the next few days. I will try to contact them and convince them to stop." Her two friends nodded. They left and Nagisa waved them off, making sure they were okay until the moment they left her sight. "What am I going to actually do?" Nagisa said, leaning over the kitchen sink. Asano then came up from behind and hugged her tightly. "Whatever you do decide to do, I will support it," Asano whispered into her ear. He could feel the tension slipping away from her body. "Let's say tomorrow we go out and enjoy ourselves," he said, turning Nagisa to look upward to him. "Then once you can think straight, we will figure this out together," Asano said, getting a small nod from his fiancée. "Please lay down with me tonight," she said, placing her hands tightly over his. Asano nodded and they walked off to her bed and just lay there until the next morning. And then came the next morning while Nagisa was showering, Asano was making her eggs. To find out that two of her teachers are her actual parents, wow, this was the only way he could express his dumbfounded at such a revelation. He heard the door to the bathroom open and said, "Breakfast is ready. I'll be in there in 5, she shouted as she started to change into her clothes for the day. After they ate breakfast they went out to the mall. As they were going to the second video game store, leaving the third clothing store, they felt as though someone was watching them. "Hey Nagisa, do you feel as though dash," but before he could finish it Nagisa finished his sentence for him. "That someone is following us, yeah. Do you think E-class has already done its planning and preparations?" she asked, scared of what was to come. "That is impossible, they only started talking about it yesterday," Asano said, reassuring her. Even so, he himself had doubts in what he was saying. "Actually, never mind, to be on the safe side let's just go home," and with that Nagisa nodded. As they started crossing the street to the bus stop they saw Terasaka, Yoshida, and Muramatsu. "What the hell?" Nagisa exclaimed as she and Asano saw them waiting at the bus stop they took to get here. They started to run down the street, instead going into the next alley they could find. While going past 3 buildings they came across the next group. Hinano, Sumire, and Toka were dressed in all black. They were carrying baseball bats, patting them on their hands. Nagisa and Asano cut left hoping to outrun them, but fortunately for them their job was not to chase. Rather it was their job to lead them towards the next group. After another 5 buildings they finally got to a set of lights. Waiting there in the alley across from them was the Bloody Doctor team. Kimura, Sugaya, and of course Hazama, all dressed in white, covered in fake BLD. This freaked them out and they ran right, hoping for dear life they could get home. Unfortunately they ended up running into Class E's gun walk. Isegai, Okajima, and Okuda used her makeshift fake gun bombs, as Karma called them. They tossed small thin paper sacks filled with chemicals to the ground where Asano and Nagisa were standing. Fortunately for them the others bought them time to sprinkle the ground with gunpowder. "Where the hell is pop 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 it coming from?" Asano shouted frantically. "Pop pop pop." Nagisa looked up and noticed them coming out of the second-story window of the building above them. "Look there," she shouted and pointed to the window she noticed. Asano looked where she was pointing and could not believe her eyes. Even though he could not see their faces, he saw the sacks falling from the window. They bolted right and went straight into the last person they expected to see that day. Karma walked slowly out of the alleyway playing with one of his knives. This caused Asano and Nagisa to come to a screeching halt, stopping right in their tracks. "I don't like creeps touching my Nagisa," Karma said, laughing hysterically. "You only need my love. You hear me, Nagisa, my love?" Karma shouted, waving his knife at them. "Karma, please, I am begging you, stop this," Nagisa pleaded with him. All this did was make him chuckle, which was for the first time disturbing for her to hear. "Akabane, stop this. You are scaring her," Asano said, moving in front of Nagisa. But this was his mistake, for Karma just seconds later was face to face with him. "Sorry, I would say I hate to do this, but I just love Nagisa too much not to do it," Karma said before stabbing him right in his gut. "Kakushu!" Nagisa screamed as she caught him before he could fall to the ground. Less than a second later she saw a bullet go straight through Karma's shoulder blade. He collapsed backwards and the officer that shot him ran to him to put him in HNDCFFS. "Dispatch, I need 2 ambulances immediately," the officer shouted as Nagisa was trying to stop Asano's bleeding. Chapter 17. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Nagisa was holding Asano's hand while sitting at his bedside when she heard a knock. "Come in," was all she could manage at the moment. "How is Asano doing?" Kayano said, being careful not to get too close to her fragile friend. Nagisa just looked up at her and Nakamura for a minute before answering. "You know, as much as I want to hate you too, I know you tried to prevent this as best as you could," Nagisa said, turning back to an unconscious Asano. "I see, if you feel like hating us for not stopping them earlier you can," Nakamura said, looking down. Gakushu is recovering, so it will be alright. Nagisa said, smiling. An awkward silence began for what could have gone on for hours. But you two are my actual friends. I can never feel like hating you two. Nagisa said, turning to them. Kayano and Nakamura could not believe what they were hearing. Despite all that has happened, Nagisa was still their friend. Looks like we probably should have stayed indoors. Asano said, laughing lightly. This made the three girls smile, and he could not be any more happy. Hey big man, what up? Ren said with the other three on tow. This also made him happy, but in a different way from the girls. It was like a MSTR being greeted by his pet dogs, loyal but somehow expendable. No, not expendable, not anymore anyways, not that they are finally friends. And it was Nagisa that made this all possible, the people surrounding him. What happened to Akabane? Asano asked, knowing Nagisa would not want to talk about it. But he felt that he needed to know what happened to him. Karma was taken to a separate hospital. Nagisa said, looking away from Asano. They are planning to throw him into an insane asylum as soon as they can transport him, she said, looking back to him. I am so sorry, I did not know Karma was that damaged, she said, not knowing how to put it. There is no need to apologize for someone else's actions, he said as he wiped a tear from her cheek. She leaned her face against his neck, quietly sobbing. The others took this as their case to give them the room for a minute, or possibly a few. After about 20 minutes, for half of which they heard Nagisa emerged. Sorry for the wait, we needed alone time. Nagisa said with emphasis on the last two words. The doctors came to take another look at Asano and his condition. In tow was Asano's father and Nagisa's mother. They came out a few minutes later smiling, which caused them to realize the good news. Asano will be let out tomorrow now that his wound is healed over, the doctor said. He then moved aside for all of them to enter and congratulate him on his recovery. At school 3 days later, as soon as Asano got to the school building, along with Nagisa and the other 4 virtuosos, he was bombarded. Everyone kept on congratulating him on fending off Akabane. While at the same time, they praised Nagisa for immediately treating his wounds. Looks like quite a few details were left out. Nagisa said to Ren as they were eating lunch on the roof. This caused everyone to look to him for answers. Well, one of the students was at the hospital and heard Asano's name. Ren said, rubbing the back of his head. So. I told her what happened. This got him angry glares from the others. But I kind of had to lie about half of it, like Nagisa's gender. He said, chuckling. Well, so long as no one knows the truth, then you are safe, for now. Asano said, raising an eyebrow. This made him worry before Asano started laughing. I am kidding, Ren, you do not need to worry. Asano said, wincing from the slight pain the laughing caused. Are you okay? Nagisa said, wondering if how badly it actually hurt him to laugh. I am fine, Nagisa, the wound is still fresh, remember. Asano said, trying to shrug it off. That was until Nagisa poked him where he was stabbed. Ah. What the actual hell, Nagisa? Asano yelled at her. This made everyone laugh, except for Asano, of course. You know, since he was the butt of Nagisa's cruel joke. But still, what happened to all of E-class? Ren asked, knowing the others were curious. Asano and Nagisa looked at one another before answering him. They were all pardoned by the principal since Karma was the only one wanting to kill Asano. Nagisa said, now only half smiling. But as far as the cops know, Karma hired random delinquents and did not bother asking their names. Nagisa said, looking down. We told them about my plan to overthrow my father and they are on board for it. Asano said, smiling. After all, they hate his teaching methods as much as I do. He said, stretching. He then placed his hands over Nagisa's to comfort her. Asano was rewarded with, as usual, the world's most appealing smile. Guys, we need to get back to class. Ren said, being the only one gutsy enough to ruin Asano's good time. This made them both stop their makeout session to turn to the others. Already geez. Oh well, at least we can finish when we get home. Asano said as he began to nuzzle her neck. This made Nagisa giggle and the other four guys really jealous of him right now. Slow your sushi roll, Romeo. Nagisa said, playfully pushing him before regaining her posture again. Alright guys, are you all ready for today's math test? Nagisa asked, knowing by the looks on their faces that they forgot about SHT, the five boys said in unison, realizing she was right about the test. And also realizing they were in for a one hell of a math class. Chapter 18. Shout out to Shiranai-san for requesting this. As soon as Nagisa and Asano got home, she grabbed his school bag and put it down alongside hers. Now you take the first bath while I make dinner, she said, clasping her hands. Are you sure you do not want to take the first bath? Asano said, not wanting to trouble her any more than he already has. Yes I am, besides I like making dinner for you, she said, giving him a light peck on the cheek. This made him blush and decide to stop arguing, so he went to his room to grab a change of clothes. When he was done with his shower, he walked into the kitchen to see Nagisa making the salad. So he decided to walk up behind her and return the peck from earlier. While you finish the salad, I will prepare the table, Asano said, walking to the cupboard to grab the plates and bowls. This made Nagisa blush, hoping this happiness will last forever. That was until they heard a knock on their door, so Asano went to see who it was. When he opened the door, the sight before him shocked him, causing him to stumble back. This is when Nagisa ran to him, seeing if he was alright, and she could not believe her eyes. It was a blue bristle board with a message written in what she swore was BLD, you are mine now and forever, my sweet blueberry. As for you, strawberry, enjoy her while you can, cause soon you will not be able to. Holy SHT, we are screwed, Asano said, realizing that Akabane was even worse off than they thought. Him and Nagisa ran to the house phone in the kitchen and dialed the police immediately. We are being targeted by Karma, Akabane, help us, Asano screamed, very panicky. Yeah, kid, an opera is trying to mug me, the lady on the phone said sarcastically. Now look, I got a job to do, so if you don't dash, she said, but was suddenly cut off. I am Gakushu Asano and Nagisa Shiota is with me now, help already, Asano yelled at her with everything he had. This made the women on the other end go silent for almost a whole minute. What? I'm sending some sweets right now, she yelled, regretting her earlier sarcasm. With that, Asano and Nagisa went to the couple next door who heard the commotion. They let them in without them even having to say anything. About a dozen officers came running up the stairwell. This made Nagisa and Asano come out. They were then scooted to the nearest station where they were met by their parents. The police then assigned the children 24-hour watch. Looks like school is going to be more interesting for a little while, Asano said, sighing. This made the police officers driving them glare at them. Unfortunately for Nagisa, not even she could laugh at a time like this. The ride to school was somewhat embarrassing, you know, being dropped off in a squad car and all. We definitely won't be the talk of the school, as usual, Nagisa said sarcastically. This, of course, she waited to say to him until after they sat down, unlike Asano. Hey guys, I guess you found out that Akabane broke free, Ren said, trying to put up a confident front, but inevitably failing, causing them to ask the one question he was trying to get them not to ask him today. Where are the other three? Asano said, knowing full well that they would never miss school, even with a psychopath like Akabane on the loose. I don't know. I have not talked to them since yesterday, Ren said, rubbing the back of his head. Asano and Nagisa knew the answer, as well as whom BLD Karma probably used. God DMN. This has to stop. This outburst made the whole class jump. It especially made Asano and Ren jump since they were right beside her. Nagisa, there is nothing we can do, Asano said, putting a hand on her shoulder. As much as he wanted to think he was lying to her, he knew full well he was telling her the truth. Which in this case was quite painful for them both, for him to do. With that, Nagisa settled down and the day went on as usual. Until about a half hour before the school day ended they heard a scream coming from the girls' washroom. Asano, Ren, and Nagisa heard this and ran there as fast as they could get there. What they and the other students saw when they entered was beyond horrifying. The three who did not come to school today were lying there dead. Laying there with them were the corpses of 3 other delinquents, all with slit throats. "Look on the mirrors," the female student who was lying on the ground pointed out. Written in BLD was a message saying you were warned. Along with the message were pictures of Nagisa in her different panties and bras. And all looked like they were taken from the window outside where she lived with her mother. She could feel everyone's eyes on not just the dead bodies now but her as well. "Oh my God," was all she could manage before the female student who was lying on the floor lunged at her. Fortunately for her, Asano elbowed her in the throat, knocking her out. He and Ren then ran with Nagisa out to the front to where the officer should have been. "Holy SHT, how strong is Akabane?" Ren said, unable to believe what he was seeing. But before he could say anything else everything went black. "I'm Bayak," Karma said, staring down at Asano as he was the last to fall under. Chapter 19. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Nagisa woke up in pitch black darkness, unsure of what just happened. "Where am I?" Nagisa asked herself, looking around trying to see where she was. When she tried to move her arms she heard chains shaking. "Not here," Nagisa said, realizing where she was. She recognized the cage she was chained up in and now knew where she was. "Nagisa, is that you?" Asano said, clearly panicking from the sudden darkness. "Nagisa, where are you?" Asano said, unsure of where they were but had a good idea of where they might be. "I'm here, Asano," she said, gasping for air in this stuffy space. "I think I know where we are," Nagisa said, really hoping she was wrong. "Where are we?" Asano asked, knowing he would not like the answer. "We are in Karma's basement and I think he chained me up in his old pet tiger's cage," Nagisa said, knowing what Asano will probably ask next. Why did his parents ever think it was a good idea to give him a pet tiger? Asano yelled. But before Nagisa could answer they heard groaning and knew who it was. You, are you two there?" Ren asked, hoping they would answer. "Yes Ren, we're here. Are you alright?" Nagisa asked, worried about how bad his injuries were. "They're not too bad, but I am definitely going to need to see a doctor soon," Ren said, very haggard. This made her worry about how bad his injuries actually were. But before she could say anything else they heard a door open and a certain someone walking in. "Hey guys, sorry for the wait, but it took time preparing her new uniform," Karma said, grinning, holding some sort of dress. "What do you mean uniform?" Nagisa asked, worried about what he was holding. "I will show you in a moment," Karma said, putting the dress down. He then lit the dozen candles that he brought with him before closing the door. "Now wear your new uniform, my sweet little Nagisa," Karma said, holding up a maid costume. "No," Nagisa shouted, now realizing that she just raised herself some real hell. Karma made a TSK sound, which meant things were about to get violent again. "What did you just say?" Karma screamed at her, making her want to cover her ears. He slammed her head against the bars, making her groan. "Akabane, don't you dare lay another hand on her," Asano shouted at him. All this did was make him chuckle before he got to work. "Now time to really enjoy myself," Karma said, forcefully tearing her shirt off. He then took out a hunting knife, cutting her BR straps off. He then tossed it aside, unable to look away from her small but appealing melons. "Karma, stop," Nagisa said, breaking down into tears as started to nibble on her nipples. He then removed her briefs and tossed aside her boxers. "Now we do what we were always meant to do," Karma said, chuckling into her inner chambers. Enjoying the taste of her delicious folds, milking Asano's and Ren's horrified faces. "I would like to take my time and say I will not now nor ever describe my second favorite anime character getting raped. And I apologize to my drunk on smut fans. I however do not apologize for the following. Enjoying the show, boys?" I would tell her to clean this place up, but it looks like she is the one that needs to be cleaned up. Karma said, chuckling softly. He then turned to see a Nagisa on the verge of unconsciousness with tears. These tears looked like they will never stop until her body runs dry. You're a monster, Akabane. Asano yelled, this not even phasing Karma. Do you ever even have a conscience? Asano asked. This made Karma's left eye twitch. He then began to blow out the candles. One by one until there was only one lit candle left. He then picked it up and walked over to Asano. Karma kneeled down and held it in front of his face. Look into my eyes. Do I still have a conscience? Karma said with a grim look. Sadly you do. Asano said, recognizing that look in his eyes. As Karma was leaving, he quickly smashed Ren's skull into the wall. Now shut up, Spiky. Karma said, walking out, extinguishing the candlelight. Good God, we need help. Asano said, sighing, unsure of what was going to happen to them. That is when he heard a man knocking, and recognized him. It was Nagisa's homeroom teacher, and if he recalled correctly, his file said he used to work for the Ministry of Defense. Great, he might be able to stop Akabane. Asano said, coughing because his throat was so dry he could barely speak. Mr. and Mrs. Akabane, are you home? Karasuma called out. That's odd, no response, but their newspaper was brought in, he thought. Karasuma decided to go around back to see if the back door was open. Unfortunately, it too was locked, and it was even blocked off by a couch. Just great, a barricade. Someone definitely is not trying to hide something. Karasuma said to himself, annoyed by this. Now if I was Karma, what kind of defenses would I set up? Karasuma asked himself, unsure of how to enter it. Hey teach, what up? Karma said, poking his head out a window, grinning. Watching Karasuma run around like a chicken without his head was quite amusing for him. Karma, please let Nagisa and those other kids go before you go any further. Karasuma yelled, hoping Karma might listen. Chapter 20. Shout out to Shiranayatsun for requesting this. Karma started laughing his head off. This disturbed him as he heard it. God, it's worse than listening to a hyena. Karasuma said under his breath. Karma heard this and stopped laughing but kept up the creepy grin. Oh really? Well, unlike you sir, at least a hyena has a brain. Karma said, dropping a small paper sack from above. It immediately exploded like the others Okuda made for their earlier attack on Asano. That is it, Karma. I am coming in. Karasuma shouted before running back around to the back door. He spared no time and shot the lock, pushing the door open. When he did, he walked into a nasty surprise, one that he probably should have seen coming. Karma was holding a large sack full of red powder, right in front of a fan. Now let's spice things up. Karma said, switching the fan on. Karasuma's lungs suddenly felt as though they were on fire. What is this? Karasuma said, coughing up blood and quite a bit of it. This was apparently an amusing sight to the red-headed devil. It is my special mix of curry powder and gunpowder. Karma said, tilting his head. Don't like it. I guess it has just a little too much kick for you. Karma said, beginning to walk towards him. Karasuma thought this was the end, that is, until a tentacle came out of nowhere. And fortunately for him, it sent Karma flying back, but before Karma tossed a grenade at his face. But fortunately for him, before it went of, the tentacle pulled him out. The only good thing is that it was full of tear gas and not gunpowder. Sorry, but did we interrupt you two at a bad time? Itona asked, looking down at Karasuma. Itona, I'm a machine and even I'm better than you at reading the room, said Ritsu as she did air quotes for the last two words. Itona simply huffed and took out the first aid kit they brought. After a few minutes of looking over Mr. Karasuma's injuries, Itona and Ritsu took out their handguns. As they were loading them with real bullets, Mr. Karasuma was concerned. Where did you get real bullets? He asked, worried about the answer. Shiro used to carry around with him a firearm. He also has warehouses full of guns and ammo, so I stole 2 of them from where he hides them. Itona said plainly. This somewhat relieved Karasuma but also scared him that someone as unstable as Itona had access all this time to real firearms. Alright, let's do this, but without the firearms if at all possible, Karasuma said. Itona and Ritsu understood this and put them in their pockets until an absolute life or death moment. This time they charged in with Itona and Karasuma covering their mouths and noses with large strips of their shirts. As soon as they made it into the kitchen, Karma tossed a match to the floor. This lit the line of oil extending from the kitchen to the living room. Itona, run back quick, Ritsu said, but then just like all men did the opposite of what he was told. Instead of running, he used his tentacles to break the faucet, causing water to go everywhere. This thankfully put out the flame, and for Itona revealed Ritsu's black lingerie she put on for him earlier. Oh come on, I really wanted to surprise you later on tonight, Ritsu said, pouting. Focus on the task at hand already. Karasuma, annoyed at how they can be distracted so easily. Even so, it was smart of Itona to do what he just did. Looks like Karasuma was the only one too distracted to think clearly. But considering how one of his students was in danger, who could blame him for not being all there? They then heard screaming from the door to the basement. Alright, let's get in there, Karasuma whispered as they made their way to the door. They slowly opened it and switched on the lights. And they deeply regret seeing what they saw. They saw Nagisa tied up, dressed in a maid outfit with a GG in her mouth. Asano and Ren were tied up and clearly beaten to the point of needing an emergency room visit. But worst of all, Karma was holding a knife to her throat. Now listen up, Karma shouted, clearly far beyond any reasoning. Me and Nagisa are going to walk out of here, he said, pointing his finger to the door. This made the three get away from the door and move to the sides of the room. They did not want to provoke him and risk Nagisa's life any more than they already have. No one will follow us and we will live long happy lives together, Karma said, giggling. This was a new and disturbing sound that he made. But just as he was about to walk away, Nagisa dived to the left. This pulled him down, with her making him drop his knife. Itona, restrain him now, Karasuma shouted. This is when Itona jumped into action. He quickly used one tentacle to grab Nagisa and then used the other three to knock out Karma. Fortunately for them, the two boys were unconscious, but just to be safe, Itona retracted his tentacles. Just then the two boys began to gain consciousness. Karasuma called his men from the Ministry of Defense and covered this up. They made sure the police and media would not get wind of this. The principal agreed to this and told his son the truth about the assassination classroom. After a few weeks, Nagisa, Asano, and Ren returned to school. Nagisa returned to Class E, and with her convincing them to save Koro-sensei. Chapter 21. Shout out to Shiranai-san for requesting this. It took a few months, but eventually Nagisa and everyone else moved on from the karma incident. Asano, Nagisa, and of course Ren all mourned the loss of their friends, and will for the rest of their lives. Even so, they will not stop moving forward. During the karma incident, he broke into Nagisa's house and killed her mother. But fortunately for her, they found a cure for Koro-sensei and he became human again. Since Nagisa was an only child, she inherited the house and now lives there with her actual parents. Koro-sensei, after blackmailing half of Japan's government, got an official teaching license, as well as got to live the peaceful life he always wanted. Irina became a housewife who also was going for a teaching degree. But unlike her new husband, had to actually go to school for hers. The principal, acknowledging their trauma with karma, he allowed them to attend the graduation ceremony. After about half a decade, Asano took over as chairman of his father's school. The karma incident kind of damaged his reputation, but fortunately the schools recovered quickly. Nagisa, on the other hand, went on to also become a teacher. She and Asano got married another 5 years after he became the chairman. Sugino became a professional baseball player. Okuda went on to create a serum to regrow human limbs. She did so by using the formula that turned Koro-sensei into a monster as a basis for it. Obviously she worked the whole tentacles KNK the original formula came with. Sugino and Okuda surprisingly enough hit off after the karma incident. turned he had a lot more in common with her than he thought. Terasaka went on to open up his own gym, which surprisingly enough he ran fairly well on his own. Nakamura went on to become a fashion designer, specifically a lingerie designer. No one in class, by the way, was surprised, of course. Itona and Rista started a new tech company by using Itona's father's old one as a base for it. And to no one's surprise, Itona and Ritsu were the first ones to get married. Then of course followed Nakamura and Terasaka and got married about a year after. Sugino and Okuda followed suit a few years later. Then finally came the day of Nagisa's and Asano's wedding. The day every one of their friends anticipated. That is right, eventually Asano warmed up to all of them and then to him. As Kanzaki, she decided to join Keano in the acting business. Which Kanzaki was quite successful in, to everyone's surprise. Even so, when all this good came out of it, there were still far too many funerals held. In place of the dead children there were now grieving families. All of which pushed for Karma to receive the death penalty. Sadly for them, they did not get, as Karma pleads of insanity was successful. Unfortunately, his parents committed suicide together, unable to accept what has transpired. Karma Akabane was then known throughout all of Japan, and the entire world by a new name. The King of Yandra, he was, as far as the world was concerned, the new Jack the Ripper. For just he left a BLD-stained mark on history, so now has Karma. But this was far from over. Nagisa, before graduating, gave BRTH to Karma's child. She put that baby girl immediately into the foster care system, unable to look at it. Its red hair reminded her of its father's BLD-stained path. All Nagisa could do was hope that the child would never discover who her parents were. Asano and Nagisa had two children, a son and then a daughter. They named their son, oddly enough, Kira, as in killer, hoping this serve always as a reminder for him of what he should never become and hope what he never will become. His little sister, however, they named after Nagisa's dead Aunt Hiromi. And with that, this story comes to its conclusion, as tragic as it may be. It was quite the journey writing this, and if anyone ever has a request, just let me know and I may consider it. As for my next story, it will hopefully be either a fairy tale or a story where the Cardfight Vanguard universe and the Assassination Classroom universe come together. Before I end this, I would like to thank all you readers for your support and hope you will enjoy my next masterpiece.